We are on.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Committee on Parent and Community Engagement, Tuesday, December 7th, 5:30 p.m. meeting. Madam Secretary, can you please call the roll to establish quorum?
Director Carr has asked to be excused tonight. Director Leonard.
Here.
Director O'Halloran.
Here.
Director Simpson is also excused tonight. Chair Taylor.
Present.
We have 3 members, which is a quorum of the committee.
Thank you. At this time, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our listening audience.
Buenas tardes. Esta junta escolar se transmitirá en español para aquellas personas que lo necesiten. Para escuchar esta junta escolar en español, por favor marque el número 312-626-6799. Repito, marque el número 312-626-6799. Ponga el número de identificación o código para esta junta, que es 608-130-5362. Repito, el número de identificación o código es 608-130-5362. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Please make sure your phones are muted so that it does not interfere. Sorry. Madam Secretary.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that, Madam Secretary. Pursuant to Board Rule 1.06, this meeting is being conducted virtually. Board members may be participating from the Central Service Building. In order to allow as much public participation as possible, this meeting is being broadcast via live stream on the MPS website and on the MPS YouTube screen, the links to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. For each item of our business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. Individuals who wish to speak on tonight's items were required to register in advance. I ask those who are waiting to speak to remain on the platform until you're called upon to speak. Just as a reminder, Robert Rules of Order dictates that all comments should be directed towards the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests are to be directed towards the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. All speakers are asked to state their name and spell their last name before proceeding with their comments. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and 15 seconds to speak. After a speaker's time is up, they may continue to follow the meeting at one of the broadcast options mentioned previously. To ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind, including inappropriate language, will not be tolerated. The chair reserves the right to remove anyone engaging in such behavior from this platform. Those removed from the platform may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, he or she will not be allowed to rejoin the platform. Written testimony may be submitted to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53201-2181, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@Milwaukee, spelled all the way out, .k1212.wi.us. Also, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting https://milwaukeepublic.ic-board.com. Madam Secretary, what is the first order of business? The first item of business.
The first item on tonight's agenda is a report with possible action regarding the data and progress associated with the Office of Civil Rights report. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Administration, you have any comments on this item?
Yes, Chair Taylor and members of the committee, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. The item before you this evening's agenda is a monthly report regarding data progress and focus for the 2021-22 school year relative to discipline. Mr. Matthew Boswell will provide an overview of our progress. and guide us through the presentation. Upon completion, we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Mr. Boswell.
Yep. So good evening, Chair Taylor, members of the committee. Matthew Boswell, Senior Director of the Department of Student Services. So I will take you through our monthly disciplinary updates and progress for the month of December. As always, we are grounded in our 5 priorities for success to increase academic achievement and accountability, improve district and school culture, develop our staff, ensure fiscal responsibility and transparency, and strengthen communication and collaboration. Reporting for 2021-22. The monthly reporting associated with disciplinary disproportionality, for the 2021-22 school year will focus on the following: to promote and provide resources to schools on alternatives to suspension, to work with schools to make certain counseling and supportive services are utilized, to analyze and evaluate individual school data related to suspensions to determine best course of action to address disproportionality, continue and expand book studies, and to form the district committees to identify, develop, and implement strategies to reduce suspension. Resources for school prevention and alternatives to suspension. We have continued our self-paced modules on our learning management system. In particular, all of our regions, but in particular, Southwest region leaders has discussed alternatives to suspension as a collective group, which is what happened to take place within all our regions. We want to just highlight Southwest this month. Classroom strategies, best practices, updated. And a highlight, as we mentioned last month, has been our brain break, which is a short activities to engage students' minds and bodies. It is purposeful to reduce stress, anxiety, frustration, and increase student focus. Analyze data and determine the course of action. This month of November, we had a totality of 2,660 suspensions. In comparison, from November 1st, 2021 through November 30th, as documented in the Infinite Campus, there were 2,660 suspensions in November 2021, compared to 2,477 suspensions in November 2019, our last full year of educational engagement. So in comparison, suspensions, although they're not where we want them to be, are down in comparison. November alternatives to suspension details that we had 216 incidents of conferences, administrative counsel. We had 1,403 detentions. We had 125 mediations. We had 59 referral to the BIT team. We had 22 repair and harm circle. We had 27. And we had 14 restorative conferences. One of the things we really have been focusing on is that administrative council. Our administrators have been taking a very active stance on making sure that they provide whatever counseling in terms of behavioral and academic engagement or resources to students before employing any bouts of referrals or suspension. And that number continues to increase, which is very positive because those are things that we have been working directly with our administrators in reference to engaging with and doing for our students. Continued and expanded book studies, courageous conversations about race book cohort continues. The push out, the criminalization of Black girls in school book cohort continued, as well as courageous conversation about race exploration seminar with 234 attendees in the month of November. And just to be reminded, that is our 3-year district plan in terms of courageous conversation exploration. So we continue with that. We have been consistent in providing those district-wide professional development trainings by categorical approach. And we are on track to complete our plan as indicated. District committees to reduce suspension. Over 100 student discipline committees have met. Student recommendations included conflict management tactics, school activities, more conversations throughout discipline process, and school opportunities within the day, as well as several others. Multiple code of conduct groups met, as I detailed before, on our approach to revising the student code of conduct. we aligned categories of focus groups, and we had an opportunity to complete that process. We are now on to our next process of getting together as a complete group to talk about, align, and then make a recommendation to the full board in terms of the recommended changes of the district code of conduct. During those meetings, they look at the disciplinary levels and definitions of behaviors. As you remember, our 1 through 4 process is 4 is counsel, 2 is suspension, 3 is referral to the Department of Student Services, and 4 is expulsion. The group was tasked with looking at each individual code of conduct behavior and setting engagement code to it, meaning some individual code of conduct violations may ultimately only go as high as 1, meaning a student can only be counseled if he breaks this student code of conduct, or 2, suspension may be considered for this student code of conduct. As directed, the group is taking a very hard look at looking at the things that kids can be suspended for. So if accepted, once all the recommendations are made, our student code of conduct will look very different going into the 22-23 school year if approved by the school board. But we are on task in terms of also identifying additional alternatives to suspension and create professional development based on needs. Our next steps, courageous conversations about rape. Our DELC sessions with district disciplinary team has taken root. We actually had our second session today, and it was extremely engaging. So expect to get a lot of resources, tools, and actionable items out of that as well. Our explorations with teachers at identified elementary schools have started and continues. And our monthly update focusing on strategy, systems, and practices, focusing on students leaving the classroom without permission. We want to drill down on a particular student code of conduct violation and come up with strategies to address such. And ultimately, our district-wide collaborative committee to update code of conduct for the 2022-2023 school year is on the way and is aligned and is happening as we speak. So with that being said, at this time, if we don't have any questions, I would like to introduce the principal of Carver Academy, Ms. Hines, who will go over our featured school of the month, which is Carver Academy. Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Boswell. Good evening, Chair Taylor and members of the committee. My name is Kristen Hines, and I'm the proud principal of Dr. George Washington Carver Academy of Mathematics and Science. I'm here today to represent Milwaukee Public Schools, as well as the East Region under the leadership of Dr. Tony Dinkins and Mr. Miguel Sanchez. I'm going to begin with our mission statement, which we all at the school proudly say, learners today and leaders tomorrow through academic excellence and strength in character. Our vision statement is married to our mission statement, and it goes, Carver's vision statement joins our mission with our work with our partners. We look at our partners to address our strategic priorities of data-driven instruction, school culture, staff development, development of teachers, staff culture, and family engagement. As a school, we continue to make progress academically as evidenced by the state report card. Over time, we've moved from 43.8 fails to meet expectations to 72.9 exceeds expectations. Our largest gain is academic growth, which I am confident that it will turn into academic achievement progress. Carver Academy is comprised of 350 students. Daily, 50 staff members serve our 350 students, where 21.3% have special education needs and 90.1% are economically disadvantaged. 93.9% of the students served are African American, with a small number representing other races. Our staff of 50 adults are comprised of 64% African American and 36% white. 20 adults are classified as either a general education teacher or a special education teacher. Of those 20 adults, 55% are white and 45% are African American. This chart highlights our work around reducing referrals and suspensions. As you can see, we have made significant progress from the year 2016 to 2017 until now. We pride ourselves in the work we have done in the past years to improve the culture at Carver. Each day, all classrooms and staff participate in either a morning meeting in grades K4 through 4th or a circle of power and respect in grades 5 through 8. Prior to COVID restrictions, we participated in a weekly morning assembly where students are engaged in learning about our core values, which we highlight as BSPIRE: belief, stewardship, perseverance, integrity, respect, and excellence, along with recognizing academics, attendance, and behavior accomplishments. These practices have helped build a community over time with staff and students. Prior to the start of the 2020-2021 school year, the leadership team at Carver Academy began to plan a vision for the year. We began examining what was happening in the city around us, the United States as a whole, and realizing there were so many emotions and feelings of uncertainty due to all the racial tensions, the unjust happenings, and the focus on systemic racism, along with the health pandemic. It was time to have open conversations with staff around these important topics. In July of 2020, we ordered Courageous Conversations About Race by Glenn Singleton, utilizing grant funds from our partnership grant. We used this opportunity to frame discussion with staff. Again, the thought was to use this as a guide to address the racial tensions, equity, and the staff and student needs. There were so many issues that could easily get in the way of academic and behavior success, and in order to make our continued growth in those areas and continue our hard work with the plan, we were open to discuss, or as Glenn Singleton titled his book, have courageous conversations about race. Each month, one of our PD sessions focused on Glenn Singleton's work. Our first meeting and discussion produced feelings of uncertainty, along with staff feeling uncomfortable. What was found during our first meeting was exactly what Glenn Singleton defines as racial consciousness, where the white staff felt inhibited when conversing about race and racial issues or found themselves lacking in knowledge or experience. The African American staff knew about their own racial experience, but some lacked an understanding of how to advance interracial dialogue in a productive manner. So needless to say, after the first session, I wasn't so sure staff would come back again to continue. The other piece that I had to put out in the front is that I'm a white leader leading a school with the majority of Black students, along with a strong percentage of Black staff. I had to humble myself and speak from the heart of why this work was important, and that we all have something to learn, and these difficult conversations will help build us in order for us to work successfully with not only our students, but our families. So the work did continue with some changes to our format. We began each meeting with reviewing norms and acknowledging it was okay to feel uncomfortable. We acknowledged we had to be good listeners and accept what was stated as the person's truth. As we continued with the work of Glenn Singleton, the conversations began to feel more comfortable with staff members being able to acknowledge their feelings, along with an openness to listen and learn from each other. By the end of last school year, we completed the book study, but to this day, utilize the structures to address racial topics, equity, staff, and student concerns. Staff were provided tools and a platform to hold difficult conversations. We began to achieve a greater sense of belonging with each other to create a better team. Our trust level amongst us had grown and our culture has expanded. All of this work is now being utilized when we work with students, both in academics and around behaviors. I am proud to say we have come a long way, but know this work is never over. I want to leave you with an experience from a paraprofessional who engaged in this work. Quote from Ms. Chastity White. Ms. Hines assigned me to work with a teacher who, in my opinion, did not have African-American students in her best interest. I told Ms. Hines I couldn't do it. In October of last school year, as we continued work around courageous conversations, Ms. Hines challenged me into having a conversation with this individual. Ms. Hines' view was if we didn't speak our truth, then there would be no change. I decided to meet with Ms. Hines and the teacher. Through the conversation, there were many tears, and by the end, we both had a better understanding. We now work in partnership where I learn from her and she learns from me. We are a great team and have the children at Carver in the forefront. I am so grateful that I had the opportunity to participate in Glenn Singleton's work and grateful that I put my trust in Ms. Hines to have the conversation that, with all honesty, has changed me to be a better individual. And with that, I conclude my presentation and thank you for providing me the time to share.
So that concludes our monthly report. At this time, we will be more than happy to entertain any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Because we do have the administrator from Carver on, I will ask any of the committee members, do they have any questions? But then I'll go immediately to those individuals in the public who are waiting. Vice Chair O'Halloran.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for presenting. It sounds like as a team in this school that it was a very valuable process. And I would just wonder, so if you've gone through that process through the end of last year, do you have plans to take like a second read through or like take on new challenges with this topic for this year? Or do you have plans to mentor, like if you have new staff, if you've gone through it as a staff collectively through last year, like do you have a process to onboard new staff so that everybody's kind of speaking the same language, if you will?
Yes, Chair Taylor and members of the committee, thank you for that question. We do live and breathe the work of Glenn Singleton, each and every professional development and any kind of conversations. We do refer back to his framing. We are also included in the district level work with the conversations about race. So our teachers are also participating in that. We have been fortunate not to have new staff members this year, but that is a great idea to think about as we move forward, and we do get new staff.
Thank you. Vice Chair O'Halloran, any other questions or comments?
No, thank you so much for the presentation.
All right, thank you. Any other committee members? I don't see any hands up.
Director Leonard is in the queue.
Thank you. I'm on the phone. Director Leonard.
Well, first of all, I'm actually quite impressed by it. I had a chance to view some similar morning routines at actually my granddaughter's school in Texas, and it did seem to create strong team and family kind of atmosphere. So it was just good to hear about that. You are very believable. I would love to see what's happening at your school, to be honest. I think it'd be good to see anything that's working to create that much of a positive response. And thank you very much. Appreciated your presentation.
All right. Thank you, Director Leonard. And I wanted to say thank you too for coming on and showing us the stats of the graph and the decrease in the work that you were doing. And a lot of times the transparency of us understanding if you are an administrator in a school with the minority majority and you are not, to understand that there has to be some work done within the staff and yourself. I want to thank you for being very transparent with that tonight and speaking on it and how you continue to work with them and how you guys are open to continuing this with any other new staff that come on, as well as the work that you're doing in your school. So thank you for all of that. Thank you for the work. And like Director Leonard said as well, too, I would love to come in and see it. I know Browning is also another school that was doing morning meetings. And it seemed like the students were woke up in the morning, they were on beat, and it gave a good positive outlook for the rest of the day when everybody came together in that one space, starting their school day off. So once again, thank you again, administration or the principal for Carver. Do you have any last words you would like to leave with us?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
you also have President Peterson in the queue.
thank you. The hands aren't showing up. I'm on this mobile phone. President Peterson.
Thank you very much. And I just want to add a thank you to the staff and principal at Carver. This is truly a very important story because I think the building of collective positive culture in our schools absolutely necessitates frank discussions about race. And, we can agree with a lot of things, but if we don't have those kind of conversations, the culture really won't be deep as it is. And just the fact that you had no teachers leave and have any, you didn't have to bring on new teachers, to me is a sign that something is really working at your school. So thank you. And I look also forward to visiting your school again. Thank you.
Thank you, President Peterson. Administration or any last words or no?
Chair Taylor, members of the board, I just want to say that we are really pushing every day to make sure that we can adjust and make sure that our menu that we offer around suspensions is addressed, and making sure that we're working with our young people and hearing what they have to say as well as our adults. Here's another example of some of the great things that are happening at Mrs. Hines School, but it's happening throughout a number of the schools within the district, and just want to say thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you as well. And before we go to public comment, I just want to share this, and then Dr. Mann will be ready to go. I know I talked to Dr. Boswell as well too, and it's great to see the schools coming back to us and telling us the great work that they've done, and how we also talked about maybe working with a couple schools that are in the transition process, and showing what are the steps that they are taking, where they're at now, and how they're moving forward, will show people the process with the I want to say it's 10 steps or 11 steps with the OCR, and how we are still working within the OCR, and some of that we have met some of the requirements, but that the work needs to continue. And so I thank Dr. Boswell for being open to that and working with us to see what else can we do and how we can continue the work process that's happening. So thank you for that. Dr. Mann, how many people do we have waiting with public comment?
We do have 4 individuals on the platform prepared to speak on this item.
All right, thank you. Let's go to public comment.
The first speaker that we have on the platform is Lucas Ware. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Lucas Weir, W-I-E-R-E-R.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Taylor, members of the committee. Last month, I asked this committee to advise administration to break this data down by school, so we would know which schools were the largest contributors to disproportionality in the district. And that remains something that I think is incredibly important. That data could then be analyzed in a variety of ways. We could look at high school level data. We could look at data relating to select criteria versus non-select criteria high schools. We could look at then middle school level data, K through 5th data, and then break it down even further. I suspect that if we had this data, we would find out that some of our hyper-segregated North Side high schools are largely responsible for the outsized suspension rates of Black children. So I think if we had this data, it would allow us to do a lot of things. First of all, just identifying the schools that are in need of the most support. As a member of my school's discipline committee, I learned that in the month of October, our building of roughly 700 students had more than 120 suspensions. If data from last month's report is correct, the district had over 2,400 suspensions in October. This means that my school, representing less than 1% of students in the district, was responsible for almost 5% of the district's suspensions. And I suspect that schools similar to mine are reporting some of the same data. I guess my question is, what is the impediment to doing additional work in terms of disaggregating the data? Because it seems to me like it would be something that wouldn't take all that long to do. And what it would do is then allow us to use our equity lens to then mobilize support for those buildings, especially at the high school level. Because of the way we discriminate in enrollment, it means that some of our schools have 40 to 50% churn rates, and some have much smaller rates, some in the single digits. And that makes it very difficult to establish a positive climate and culture. Please ask for this data.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Angela Lucas Foley. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Good evening, Angela Lucas Foley, Lucas space Foley.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Taylor, members of the Board of Administration, the Board of Directors and Administration. Anti-Racist White Educators of Milwaukee has consistently pressed the Milwaukee Board of School Directors and MPS administration for more than a year from 3 members of RWE and 1 member of BEC. Chair Taylor asked specifically that the community members be reached out to so that our questions could be recorded and answered. We were not reached out to by this board or by MPS administration. Additionally, Director O'Halloran asked specifically for information from administration for specifically how professional development strategies and trainings were being offered. RWE would like to see what information has been provided to Director O'Halloran regarding this request. At the October 5th PACE meeting following public testimony, Director Carr asked for the policies that mandate professional development and specifically asked for evidence of the use of the district's culture and climate toolkit. Anti-Racist White Educators of Milwaukee would also like to see what follow-up has been provided to Director Carr regarding this request. I know I have been on this platform many times, and the only other thing to note is that disproportionality remains at or above the level of as it was when the infraction with Office of Civil Rights was submitted. When you calculate out the number of suspensions handed to the district, currently 77% of suspensions are going to our Black students, and Black students represent 50% of MPS students.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Michelle Colbert. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Hi, my name is Michelle Hilbert, Hilbert. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and dedication to this important work, Chair Taylor, OCR team, and members of the committee. I recognize that the district has assembled a number of self-paced PD modules, and discipline champs receive regular communication with many informative links. The self-paced modules are available for all staff members throughout the district. I see these opportunities are offered, but is administration setting goals for participation? I asked this in October, and I'm not seeing that in the report. We all know that goal setting is one part of best practices, and SMART goals are measurable and have a timeline. I know Director O'Halloran has asked for some of this information, and transparency is an important value. The report said that this participation data is up to the month of December, and thank you for sharing those accumulated numbers of participants. Would it also be valuable to know how many from this report are engaging for the first time, and how many have paced their way through more than one module or through the conversations, like what is that percentage that represents the total staff, and how is the district holding itself accountable and meeting goals or benchmarks? Offering the opportunities is not enough. Also, Director Taylor's school to prison pipeline resolution acknowledges that racism is an urgent health crisis in our city. We see critical disproportionality in this negative progress, as Angela just mentioned, presented in this report. Staff assign 77% of suspensions to Black students, who make up 50% of our MPS population. This is near that ratio of the original OCR complaint. It's necessary we continue to have this mandatory, ongoing, high quality, anti-racist professional developed for all staff. We also need to be fully staffed as well. I wonder what other next steps are, though, for supporting our students. What are the young people saying, as Superintendent Posley just mentioned? We need to be bold and get comfortable with being uncomfortable in this vital work. I look forward to seeing how it's explicitly tied with your resolution, Director Taylor. I missed that in the next step section as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the platform is Gretchen Kaeperman. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Gretchen Kaeperman, Kaeperman.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Taylor, members of the committee. I'm testifying as a member of Anti-Racist White Educators Milwaukee. Today, as my colleague Angela Lucas Foley stated, Are We Milwaukee is asking for accountability. MPS administration and this committee's follow-through on necessary OCR matters has been lacking. 6 important requests from November's and October's meetings have not been fulfilled. I'm going to list them out. In November, Directors Taylor, O'Halloran, and Peterson asked questions that we would like responses to. Director Taylor asked for follow-up with that meeting's speakers. No follow-up has happened. Director O'Halloran asked how offered professional development and emailed strategies are being utilized. There was no response on that in this month's report. Director Peterson asked for a report on the 15 restorative practices schools cohort. Information on those schools is not in this month's report. In October, Directors Carr and Taylor asked questions that we would like responses to. Director Carr asked for evidence of multi-tiered systems of support, specifically Tier 1 training. She also asked for the policies that mandate professional development and specifically asked for evidence of use of the district's climate and culture toolkit. Again, no response. Director Taylor asked for students who have received behavior infractions to be invited to help provide insight into both root causes and root cause analysis and solution-focused thinking in regards to discipline. Again, no reply to this inquiry. The community continues to listen. Please respond to the listed questions and requests. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that completes the public testimony on this item. And we are now, this item is back with the committee.
Okay, I'll go to committee members. Madam Secretary, I'm just gonna need you to help me with the hands. But also I just wanna follow up that, you know, some of the questions that was asked, and I do recall asking for those individuals that spoke last month to be reached out to for those questions. So Madam Secretary, I would like the Office of Board Governance to reach out to those individuals to ensure that we get their questions back, and so that we can then forward it on to administration for the answers and then do a follow-up for that. I know
Madam
some of them may
Chair?
be something. Yes.
Members of the committee, that actually took place upon request.
Okay. So I'll follow back up with you to understand what process we're in now and make sure we reach back out to them so they can understand the process as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Any committee members have questions or comments for item number 1? And
You do
Madam
have
Clerk,
Director Leonard in the queue?
Director Leonard, thank you.
So my first question is just some clarification on the math. I'm looking at 2,660 suspensions, and then I'm seeing 1,866 alternatives. Are those to those suspensions, which would mean we only have actually had formally 794 suspensions? So that's my first question, and I'll wait for a reply on that.
Thank you, administration.
Chair Taylor and members of the committee, no, those are kind of two separate metrics. If a student is getting a suspension, they're not getting an alternative to suspension, so they'll never be the same number. Basically, when a discipline infraction occurs, depending on the action level and the code of conduct, like Mr. Boswell discussed, an administrator can decide, yep, this is a suspension, or this is going to be one of those alternatives to suspension. So they're not going to match up. They're kind of opposite in a way. It's one or the other.
Yeah, these are alternatives to suspension.
Yeah.
Okay.
Director Leonard.
Sorry. Thank you. So then I guess, well, that concerns me. That means we have way more numbers than I had expected, which is a little bit disconcerting to say the least. But I do see some alternatives that are being taken on. I also think it should be mentioned that, well, let me first say this. With regard to Mr. Weir's questions, request to see how it is done by schools, I think that's probably the first starting point where we can start looking at that and saying, hey, let's just see which schools are creating the most kinds of disproportionality. So at least we can start actually looking at it as board directors. So I have not seen that information. I would love to see that myself. So I'll wait for your response on that. Looks like you're talking.
Maybe it's a delay. Administration answering Director Leonard's question about the breakdown by school for the data.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, we do have that data. It is part of the district discipline disproportionality team monthly meeting. We look at it by all those different metrics, including by school. Part of it is we might have to have a discussion about what that looks like when we face it out to the public and what data is embargoed and has to be, different things have to occur. That's why it's not part of our monthly update here, but that is part of the discussions at that district team meeting where we have looked at it. And like Mr. Weir mentioned, it's difficult to look at disproportionality at the school level because of the hyper-segregation of the city of Milwaukee, but we can and we have started to identify schools that are disproportionately suspending students relative to the district average. So we might have to have a discussion about what that looks like, but it is occurring and we have it at the district disproportionality leadership team meeting.
Okay.
Director Leonard.
And then just the last thing, this is just a statement or some information. I just want at least the public to know that we are putting a lot of different actions into place. I've had a chance to talk to Director Taylor about this a little bit and others and Dr. Posley. So we are working with different mentoring groups that are coming into our schools to work with our at-risk students. This is just an outside effort, but it looks like it's just different. I guess I want to make it public that we're doing this, that we're not just sort of sitting on the backside and waiting for metrics to show up. So those programs could involve a significant number of schools in the city of Milwaukee. I also know that, well, I think I'll leave the last part. I have to talk to somebody else before I can speak publicly on the last part. So I apologize for that. Sorry. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Leonard. And just to make sure, because y'all answered the question and said some of the information could be shared, just because I know people of the public are listening. Administration, could you go back over once again the breakdown by schools and what does that entail and what are we looking to do with that information? Or how can we disbursement, I believe was more the question.
Yeah, so Chair Taylor and members of the committee, I believe in being extremely transparent, but I also want to throw up some flags of caution as the custodian of records for the district. I think we have had this discussion before in terms of lining schools up, so to speak, and putting that type of data out for the public and the recoil it can have for some schools. that automatically, why I think it's a good practice in terms of looking at the data and know where to align the resources, that also can become an enrollment deterrent for some schools. So I just want to have a sense of caution. I know that the speakers come on and they make different suggestions, but I think across the board, we cannot fix one inequity and create another. So I think I just want to say that we have to be very cautious in terms of that. If I just happen to be one of those leaders or principals at that identified school, that's going to have a negative impact on that school. And as a sitting principal, as always, if I was a principal of that school, I would be very concerned. Not that I would want to hide my data, but we have to think about what message does that send for that particular school.
All right, thank you for that. And I'm sure we'll have more communication and conversation about it, and maybe just break down by high schools, middle and elementary versus singling in on one school. But that is definitely a conversation I would like us to talk more about. But thank you for that. Any other committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Madam Secretary, I'm gonna need your assistance if you see hands.
Director O'Halloran.
All right, Vice Chair O'Halloran.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. And I did want to just amplify or like echo your sentiment about having the people. I'm not sure where that situation is, but if people were supposed to be communicated with and they're telling us that they haven't been, I would just like somebody to follow up on that, please. The two questions then outside of that, one, can you remind me where we're at with the courageous conversations? I know you said we're on track, so I was just wondering where we're at in that cycle. Yeah.
All right, administration.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, yes, we are on track. We have contracted for 22 total exploration sessions this year. We have those scheduled out for the rest of the remaining year. We have another round of them in 2 weeks, and then a big batch of them in January. As it says in the report, we have had a total of 2,157 staff members attend since March. And we again are looking at all staff members, and that is plus or minus around 9,000 staff members at all these different groups. But we have focused on high schools. We have done that. We are trying to capture some of the newly hired high school teachers, which is an ongoing process. And now we have just started with the elementary school teachers. So we still are on that pace. We just have to make sure that we stay engaged in those identified groups.
Thank you, Director O'Halloran.
Yep, just one more question. I don't want to take up too much. For the code of conduct, when can we anticipate recommendations coming back? I know that's in the process, and I just want to keep it in the back of my mind when I can anticipate the recommendations.
Administration.
Yeah. So, Chair Taylor, members of the committee, we did put out a schedule in reference to that. What I like to say as well is I'm asking that the frequent speakers, I don't have their information. I want to make sure that they are invited to the Student Code of Conduct revisions and review committee. I think it's important for them to be there. That's where the work really starts, begins, and ends. And I think that they're quite passionate about MPS. I would definitely like to invite them to engage in that work. So if someone can provide some contact information or email, once we contact them, I'll be more than happy to send that schedule out. And we're looking to, once we complete that process, we're looking to bring it to the board in maybe late April, and for approval, or maybe even a little earlier, but that is the latest. And we always build a little time in there because several things may have to go through the city attorney. You have to look at ordinance. I know one of the big things is drugs. It's always a big discussion. So we have to build in that time if things need to go to the city attorney for approval. So I'll be more than happy to update the board with the schedule and go forward. But that is the time frame. We identified our focus groups. We have done that. We have identified the dates that we will meet as a committee to revise the code of conduct. In January, that is scheduled. So we're on track with that. And I just want to make sure that those individuals were invited. I want to make sure that they were active participants in this process going forward. So,
Madam Chair.
Madam Secretary.
Members of the committee, we will go ahead and forward the speaker list, which has contact information to Mr. Boswell for follow-up with the individuals to be invited to join the committee. In addition, per yours and Director O'Halloran's request, we will process an individual information request for each one of the speakers who identified questions that they would like to have answered. And that is a formal request of the administration to provide a response for their individual questions. The speakers also brought up the fact that board members may have had questions, but those responses would go directly to board members.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you.
Chair O'Halloran, I believe you said that was your last question. Did you have any other follow-up?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no other questions or comments from committee members, thank you all. Madam Secretary, next item.
The next item is item number 2. Item number 2 is a report with possible action on family and community engagement. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Thank you. Administration.
This item related to family and community engagement highlights the importance of fostering family and community relationships, as well as providing families with resources and the strong customer service. At this time, I will ask Christy Stone to begin the presentation, which includes highlights of some of our partnerships and for families and students. Christy.
Good evening, Chair Taylor and members of the board. My name is Christy Stone, Director of Strategic Partnerships and Customer Service. And with me, I have Daryl Hall, Family and Community Engagement Associate. I am excited to have the opportunity to update the board on our activities related to family and community engagement. The purpose of this presentation tonight is to share some of our efforts to empower families to build mutually beneficial relationships with their schools to promote greater student outcomes. And in addition, we'll provide an update on our customer service and community partnership activities. Next slide, please. As we look at our 5 priorities of success, family engagement is a critical component across all 5 areas. In particular, our work aligns with developing families as strong allies to improve district and school culture and strengthening communication and collaboration with families. Next slide, please. The family and community engagement framework includes 6 standards that all schools must strive to meet. Those standards are: schools are welcoming and culturally relevant environments. Schools are connected to the community. Schools have tools and knowledge needed to build relationships with families in the community. Schools have tools and knowledge needed to be active in school. Families have opportunities to build peer networks, and families have avenues to serve as a leader. These standards, along with the 5 priorities for success, serve as a guide for the work done by the family engagement team, as well as our parent coordinators to help achieve the goals we would like to accomplish with our families. Next slide, please. During our last presentation, we were asked to share more information about our specific goals as it relates to family engagement this year. Our first goal is to be 100% compliant with conducting annual Title I meetings for all schools. This goal is important because it provides schools with the opportunity to inform parents of their rights and responsibilities and their rights to know about the culture and climate, to learn more about the curriculum as it relates to state standards and the assessment tools the school uses. Parents also are given important school contact information and updates on ways they can be involved at the school. I'm happy to say that we are on track to achieve this goal by December 31st. Our second goal is to provide 100% of schools leaders with feedback from families regarding their schools. It's important for schools to know how they're doing and how their parents feel about the school community so they can make the changes needed to be successful partners with students and families. Right after the new year, we have plans to launch our district family interest survey, which includes questions to parents about how they're feeling about the school, its culture and climate, the level of communication, shared leadership, and the ability for them to provide input. Each principal will receive a full report out of the school's responses and data. This information can be used to help develop future programming and activities to better engage families as partners. Our next goal is to increase the number of schools that have family/leadership involvement organizations by 25% by June 30th. We're looking to foster more meaningful ways to involve families outside of the monthly standard meetings that are offered, such as the District Advisory Council and the School Engagement Council. These groups can include Facebook groups, reading book clubs, and other types of groups that provide networking opportunities for families to establish relationships and build capacity to support student achievement. Our final goal is to increase volunteer participation by 20% to support students in schools by June 30th. Our goal is to make sure that all school communities have as much support as possible to help sponsor events and have additional resources that the schools may need, such as classroom and reading and math support and other donations or essential items that they may need. Next slide, please. In addition to these goals, it's extremely important to provide positive pathways for families to gain information, for them to also get answers and have access to the school and the district. The Department of Strategic Partnerships and Customer Service oversees the district welcome centers that serve as customer service hubs for families and community members to interact with MPS. The purpose of the Welcome Center is to serve as a one-stop shop for families to receive the support they need. Any family currently connected to MPS or interested in learning more is able to come into the centers to get more information about enrollment, transportation, specialized service referrals, Head Start, bilingual testing, or accessing the parent portal, just to name a few. Additionally, these centers provide support for dispute resolution. The Welcome Center team assists families with finding equitable solutions when there are disagreements or misunderstandings about their child's education or learning environment. The goal of our dispute resolution process is to provide an avenue for parents and families to work with school leadership and MPS staff to quickly resolve school-based concerns. Since July 1 of this year, the Welcome Center has helped over 1,800 families find the support they need for their child's education. And actually, as of December 1, that number was 2,300. Next slide, please. Another way we support families is through the Mps Switchboard. Oftentimes, they are the first point of contact for families and community members who reach out to the district to get more information. We have 2 full-time phone operators that handle all inbound calls to the district. They assist callers with general questions, or they work to get them transferred to the appropriate person who can assist them with their needs. They have helped make sure that well over 48,000, and actually that number as of December 1 was 56,355 families and callers had a warm, friendly point of contact to the district to get the assistance they needed. We are currently up over 10,000 calls from this time last year, and that was primarily due to the number of calls received from families in August and September with questions about returning back to school in person, as well as our virtual learning options. Next slide, please. Lastly, I just want to provide an update about our partnerships. This fall, we had several companies, community organizations, as well as individual donors come together to support our students with back to school efforts, especially returning back to the classroom after COVID-19. We had several larger drives for backpacks to help MPS students. Some were hosted by WLESN and the Salvation Army, as well as 88.9 Educators Credit Union and the MPS Foundation, and countless others who donated book bags and school supplies. We estimate that well over 5,000 students were served through the kind efforts of our community partners. To close, unfortunately, our representative that was planning to join us tonight to kind of talk about the benefits of their partnerships was not able to attend today, but Principal Radmanovic and the school social worker, Katie Smith from Escala View School, wanted to make sure that I shared the following information with you. Their school was a recipient of the WISN Salvation Army book bags. Ms. Schmidt, the school social worker, stated that as a social worker, she always has a small amount of book bags reserved for students in the homeless education program, but View's population qualifies as high poverty, with over 93% of their students meeting that level. There are several families who were in need of backpacks and school supplies due to financial reasons. Because of the generous donation of backpacks, they were able to help all of their students, in particular, their newly arriving students, many from other countries. They also had a family that experienced a loss due to a house fire, as well as countless parents who were just getting back into the workforce following COVID and being home with their kids during virtual learning last year, who didn't have the money to purchase school supply items this year. And obviously there's many more examples of need, but they were extremely grateful to be able to be a recipient of the backpacks and school supplies. Students upon entry, and to make sure they had a smooth transition back to school. The families were also very appreciative of the support that we were able to provide them, and the importance, they just wanted to stress the importance of the support from our community partners. That concludes my report. Are there any questions?
It's coming back on. Thank you for that. Any committee members have any questions? First, Madam Clerk, is there any public testimony on this item?
Madam Chair, we have no requests for public testimony on this item, and you have Director O'Halloran in the queue.
Thank you. Vice Chair O'Halloran.
Thank you. I do have one question, but I just wanted to start with a message of gratitude. This is a really fantastic overview, and there's so many points where I'm like, I want to thank you for the book club. I'm actually signed up with my daughter. It's a Mommy and Me book club. So we'll be starting those meetings in January. So I appreciate your efforts to increase engagement, whether it's Facebook groups or book clubs like that within the schools. I want to thank the 2 switchboard superheroes who are handling all of those calls. That is just, when you put it like that, like 2 people handling all of those calls, that is outstanding. And I really want to thank them for their efforts. And then I wanted to thank all of our partners who are stepping up to the plate to help our students get what they need and help our staff get what they need for our students. So my one question was, one of the metrics was to increase community volunteers. Do you just want to put in a plug for how people can find those opportunities, or else how people, like at my church, there's a lot of retired MPS teachers and administrators who might be interested in these volunteer opportunities. So how can we spread the word and help you reach this goal?
Thank you. Administration.
Absolutely, Chair Taylor, Vice Chair O'Halloran, thank you for that question. Absolutely, our district is in need of as many volunteers as we can get. Our schools greatly appreciate the classroom support that they're able to provide. The best way to get started is to go to our website and look at volunteers. They can sign up online and start the application process. Our volunteer coordinator, Sophia Smith, will be in contact with them to walk them through the application process and to get a list of their preferences. And we can help get them deployed out into a school or location in the district as quickly as possible. So thank you for giving us that opportunity to plug that.
Thank you. And thank you for all of the work that you've done and continue to work in our communities. Any other members have any questions or comments? Madam Secretary.
The next item is item number 3, a report with possible action on services provided to students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment, the LRE report. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Thank you. Administration.
Our last item this evening is the least restrictive environment report, our LRE report. and it focuses on the district's progress related to ensuring our students with disabilities are educated to the extent appropriate in an environment with our non-disabled peers. At this time, I will ask Jennifer Mims Howell to begin the presentation, and afterwards we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Jennifer.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Good evening, Vice President Taylor and members of the committee. I am Jennifer Mims Howell, Chief Academic Officer. Tonight, I will speak about the MPS numbers for our least restrictive environment. The least restrictive environment information is reported through the Individuals with Disabilities Act of 2004. It requires, to the maximum extent possible, children with disabilities be educated with children with their non-disabled peers. As we look at the numbers, Milwaukee Public Schools has consistently exceeded the target set by the state of Wisconsin. 70% is the target. Milwaukee Public Schools is currently at 83.43%. As you can see, over the last few months, Milwaukee Public Schools has held this number consistently. The numbers remain very similar for a few reasons. Milwaukee Public Schools continues to make sure that students with disabilities are educated in the general curriculum. Also, through the trainings that we offer, this affects the numbers in 5B and in 5C. We currently continue to offer to our students with disabilities an opportunity for them to be educated with their non-disabled peers. We offer trainings for our CHAs and paraprofessionals. In the month of November, we offered a training for our more comprehensive students in ways that they can be supported. In December, we are offering a training on social emotional learning, another way for students to be included. We offer trainings for our teachers to have support in IEP writing, reevaluation writing, and also ways that they can provide services to students based on their individual needs. We offer trainings to our teachers for transition supports. This is the supports given to our students as they prepare for post-secondary school or a college career or work in the workforce for our students ages 14 to 21. They must have an IEP goal for this. For reevaluations, we work with staff to make sure that we are looking at the student progress for students with disabilities, ensuring that they have an opportunity to participate alongside of their peers. And finally, we also offer trainings in our bridging units, where we provide services to our students in an alternate curriculum, giving them the opportunity to have the support they need, either from an extra paraprofessional, extra social emotional supports, or extra behavioral supports, so they too can participate with their non-disabled peers. As we look at the numbers for the percentages of students ages 6 to 21 who are served less time in the classroom, Milwaukee Public Schools, while remaining under the state's projection, we continue to offer training that we can include more students into these programs. Thank you. We will now take questions.
Madam Chair, your device is muted.
Can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you now. There's no request for public testimony on this item.
Thank you. Any committee members wishing to talk on this item?
You have Director Leonard in the queue.
Thank you. And as I go to Director Leonard, also, if you can talk about how we do continue services for those individual babies or students who are 18 and may be transitioning out for high school. Administration, and then after that, Director Leonard.
Chair Taylor, members of the committee, Jennifer Mims Howell, Chief Academic Officer. As we work on the goals for our transition students, Milwaukee Public Schools is required to provide services for our students ages 14 to 21. When students turn 18, they can be involved in becoming their own guardian. They also can be involved in some of the other programs we offer here in the district. We also connect them with DVR, that is a division of vocational rehab. So these students can continue to work within the community as well as have the supports of Milwaukee Public Schools. And as we work with the students and families to pass on the traditions and practices that they've learned here at Milwaukee Public Schools, it gives them an opening to community services. Our social workers work closely with the students, making sure that they have the transition goals. Our school counselors work with students, they can prepare for FAFSA, fill out the FAFSA forms, as well as look at opportunities that they can partake in. And because our students with disabilities can stay to age 21, many of the transition coordinators, as well as their caseload teachers, work to make sure that students have the academics in place so that they can attend either a 2-year, 4-year college after they leave Milwaukee Public Schools.
Thank you for that. I just think it's pertinent that the community and other individuals know some of the additional work we do when they are aging out from possible other options. Director Leonard.
So thank you, Chairperson Taylor. Actually, that was my first question, so you answered that for me. Thank you. I have to be, and I believe that in many schools, we are doing a very good job with our special ed conundrum. I'm going to call it a conundrum. I was a special ed teacher for the last 6 years of my career, and nothing was as smooth as it makes it always sound. So I have to be very honest, and I'm extremely strong advocate for those parents and teachers, and I've been getting a load of teachers and parents coming to me in the last month. So I'm going to present some concerns, and then I'm really not asking you to answer them. I'm asking you to, if you can answer some of these questions, that would be great. The first concern comes from a significant number of teachers who are very concerned and frustrated with not having adequate support, especially when they're pushing students in and their classroom sizes are already extremely high. Quite a few of the teachers said they have not had any paras or assistants in their rooms, and in the process, they have been struggling with, especially those students that need a lot more support, students that are autistic, that are being pushed into classrooms under the condition that, well, you have the support that should be in there, but that support is not there. And it becomes an extremely tough situation as a classroom teacher. And I'm getting those same complaints from a number of parents that have their students, their regular ed students in those classrooms. So this becomes a really contentious issue. I think it's something that we have avoided for a long time at MPS, I'll be honest with you. I know for the past 6 years when I was teaching, it was a challenge at times, and I think it needs to be addressed. Not sure if I have all the answers for this, but I do want to bring that concern up. And the other concern that I'm getting from a significant number of parents from not just the 7th district, but all around, is the way we do our grading system for our special ed students when they're in a regular ed classroom. I especially got a couple of angry parents last week saying, I wasn't even aware that my child was only getting minimals, which I'm aware that we used to do that all the time as special ed teachers. We were required to do that because they're below grade level. But I do know that myself and one of the other board directors is looking at a way to somehow change that policy if it's possible. But I actually asking you, is that a state mandate requiring us to grade them as minimal when they're in a special ed, when they come in with a special ed status? I am going to leave it at that because I have a lot more, but I don't want to hit us with a million different things right now.
Administration.
Chair Taylor, Director Leonard, members of the committee, Jennifer Mims Howe, Chief Academic Officer. So one of the things that you spoke of, Director Leonard, in your first statement was about the staffing in the classroom. As you know, Milwaukee Public Schools, we're struggling with staffing across the board. One of the reasons that we are making sure students, as you said, are pushed into general curriculum is because these students are required by law of free appropriate public education. They need to make sure, MPS needs to make sure that we're offering them the opportunity to be educated. Now, we've come up with some creative ways as far as pairing students, doing some peer partnering. We've also tried to rotate in many schools paraprofessionals in different classrooms. I do know that our more comprehensive students have taken some of the paraprofessionals away from the students getting the support in the general education classroom. Their IEPs, each student has an IEP, which directs about the amount of time they should be in their general curriculum classroom. As our students work towards getting a diploma, the more time they spend in general curriculum, the more acclimated they become with the information. But because we have a staffing issue, yes, across the board, it has been very difficult to support the students. And that's why we've been trying to come up with creative ways to do it. I think your second question was about the grading system. So please remember that, again, students in general curriculum, no matter students with ESL needs or with disabilities, are required to receive a report card just as their peers are. So the report card has a general basis. The difference with students with IEPs is that they also have a progress report. The IEP's progress report kind of talks about the goals that Jennifer is working on to get to the standards. So the ambitious instruction that we're working on, accelerated learning, is putting the standards out there for all students. And with students with disabilities that do receive a minimum, their IEP progress report can speak to the goals that they're working on. Are they making progress in the goals they're working on towards their math curriculum? Or is the specially designed instruction they're receiving for English language arts, is it sufficient? So parents can always ask for a review revised IEP, and I encourage them to do that. At parent-teacher conference, that came up quite a bit, mainly because of the time we were out and students working in a virtual environment. There were some students who were very successful in that environment, but many of our students did struggle during that time. Parents had the opportunity to ask for additional services through an IEP process, but they also had a chance to talk to the teachers about what is it Jennifer needs to do. So for instance, in a case of a student who may need more math supports, their IEP could be written to provide additional services in the areas of math. However, maybe for English language arts, the supportive services that were given were plenty. And the same thing with our functional services, our behavioral services, as well as our therapies. So when parents are feeling that, you know what, they need a little bit more to make sure they can receive what they need, or to even perform at the standards level, grade level, or wherever they feel their child should be performing, they can definitely ask for an IEP meeting, and we can work to make sure that each student gets what they need.
Director Leonard.
Let me see if I understand this correctly, because I want to make sure when I go back to these parents that I have a very clear answer for them. So if the IEP is asking for a certain amount of growth, that growth can be reflected in the narrative on the report card or the actual report card standards, because they're all seeing minimals. They're showing me these report cards. They're all minimals. So I'm a little bit, and I do understand that, but I wanted to make sure, is there any way that we can grade them in a different way on the actual growth of where they are on their IEP? I guess that's what I'm actually asking.
All right, administration.
Chair Taylor, Director Leonard. So the report card is different than the IEP progress report.
Right.
So although the report card may say minimal, the goals that Jennifer is working on, I'm using myself as an example, the goals that Jennifer is working on in English language arts may be outlined in the progress report. So there's some progress being made that's recorded there. The minimal grade, the question would be for the parent, is this minimal grade based on the umbrella standards listed on the report card, or is it based on the actual assignments or projects that are being worked on towards grade level standards? I guess that would be the question to ask the parent, because I do know in some cases, so our early childhood report cards look a little different than our high school report cards. And so if there's progress being made towards my annual goal, that could be reflected in the progress reports. The narrative could have information on that as well, because remember the regular education teacher gives information towards the regular report card. They also can give input on the progress report. However, it's important that the special education teacher give information mainly for the progress report, but they can also add additional information on progress towards goals, towards standards on the regular report card.
Thank you.
Director Leonard.
We're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Madam Secretary. I can't see any hands.
Madam Chair, there are no board members requesting to speak on this item.
All right, thank you. Would this be the last item as well, Madam Secretary?
Madam Chair, this is the last item on this meeting's agenda.
All right. The meeting is adjourned. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good night.